thanks for clicking on the video. My name is Lily Warren, and this is the Creative Prints channel. I am inviting you and wanting to create in this community environment a space where we can learn and we can go through the process of making mistakes and not just perfection, but the results of how we got there and how we can make and build such amazing things together and be able to share this community of feedback, of positive criticism, and any comments or ideas, because I really want to open the floor to you guys too. It's not just about me and what I'm creating, right? So thank you for joining us today. Alrighty, and the first thing I definitely wanted to jump into first and kind of just show you guys for the community is something you're definitely going to bump into quite a bit, and it might put you into a little frantic emotional rush because it can be intimidating, especially for your first time. But the extrusion clogging and extruder errors in that area is definitely I want to show you guys today, so you can kind of have it underneath your belt if you have a printer, if you're printing a lot, if you've had this happen, whichever. Alrighty, so jumping right into it, this is going to be my 3D printing unit. And it is a Bambu Lab A1. Definitely for the extrusion problems, it is going to be a bit universal between Bambu Lab A1, Mini, any other extrusion errors, definitely still universal, however, may not be the same exact process for this problem. However, this is definitely a go-to video if you'd like to continue watching the video. Other than that, I do want to jump into the tools that will definitely be required, just because there's a cold pull method and there's a hot pull method that I like to define by, and that would be first, the tools, some sort of metal tools, pliers that have some sort of protective unit on it, anything that when it's hot and we are taking out the extruder itself will protect you from that heat. This one definitely helps. If you have a bigger one, just to be able to clamp onto the nozzle itself, that'll definitely help you. Again, they have some sort of hand protector from the metal. And the third tool you'll definitely need if you want to have some sort of protection between the nozzle itself and the surface that you lie it on will be some sort of cloth or towelette. Additional tools that you do not require to have would be this filament needle that would basically go into the nozzle once we're done with the process of unclogging, and just to double check that there's nothing stuck in the way, essentially. That will definitely come with, or you can buy separately, your Bambu Lab pack that comes with the 3D printer. An example of a tool that you can use, however, this one I'm going to be using last case scenario because, again, it doesn't have any protective handheld properties, and it would work, however, definitely going to be one of my last case scenarios. So once you either get a notification from your printer itself, because there is AI in this printer in Bambu Lab company itself, in the camera, it'll definitely tell you that there's an extrusion error, or if you come home and you find it, you're going to want to turn everything off. You're going to want to cancel your print, pause your print, do what you need to do, and you're going to want to turn the entire unit itself off so that you can allow it to cool down and you can kind of process, because you may be a little frazzled and you just want to allow it to process, cool down, and all of that. Once you've gotten through that, you can actually turn the printer back on and see that essentially there isn't going to be really anything wrong with the entire hull. It'll just be the extruder error. Now that my printer is turning on slowly and surely, there you go, little B, characteristic to the Bambu Lab. Now what you'll want to do once you turn everything on is you're going to actually try and get any sort of filament that is still inside here, connected, whichever. So you can go through the process of pressing this side button, and you can manually cut off the filament itself, and what that actually is going to do is it will cut off that filament, and you can reel this all the way back manually if you choose, and that will actually keep a sliver of filament in here. And when you do your cold pull method, it'll be the method of heating that filament back up, hoping that the only extrusion clog is kind of just a little piece lodged in there, and it connects to that, and when you do your cold pull, you'll be able to pull it out. Other than that, if you don't wish to use this button and you want the filament to unload itself, you can head over to your display, hit filament. I have my red filament already loaded, and once I click on that, I can obviously press load or unload. And that at that point, I'll want to press unload because it will heat the nozzle back up so that after it cuts it off, it allows the extruded filament through here to come back all the way, and then it can actually reel it all the way back too. So just for that process, after this is cut, and you want to reel this back, there you go. Now there is no filament within the system and new filament going back into it. It's just going to be either what you cut off or what is clogging inside the extruder unit itself. Now we want to be able to address where the clog is itself. So just the basics of just being able to pinpoint that. I've done this a lot, so I can get this done clip pretty quickly. Do it delicately for these little clasps and these little hooks if you wish. However, this is a cover plate. You're going to want to take that off. And then this guy, you're definitely going to want to pinch him off. Definitely takes a little bit of confidence knowing that these guys are a bit flexible, and the printer is designed to know that it does need maintenance and that there are going to be problems. So just to point out where my extrusion clog and error is, you can definitely see some signs of plastic and then filament and it coming out where it's not supposed to, essentially. So once we're able to identify where it's at, and it may not be able to be identifiable if it's just something slightly inside here in the nozzle itself, or it's this multi-filament chamber itself in here, where the filament gets pulled into and goes down into the extruder through the nozzle and the heating unit. This may be a problem too, and we can address this, and we can address this today. And troubleshooting methods. This is going to be your extruder itself, what twists and churns the filament all the way down into the heating element. Typically, it is very rare for this to actually be your problem. It is going to be either above it or below it. That is going to be your problem. Nozzles are replaceable. That is something in this world, in the Bambu lab, and 3D printing, whichever you want to say. It is definitely common to replace nozzles, especially when you have multiple extrusion errors on the same nozzle. So you can probably already recognize there is no filament in my AMS reader that is pushed in. So that is good. Definitely want to go to my controls, turn that light off if I can. And then the next step will be actually heating up the nozzle itself so that you can actually make sure that there is no extrusion errors in the nozzle and to be able to attach it. Because sometimes there's differences in the extruder clogging itself. Because I have some filament leakage, it may actually bond itself with that filament to the heating unit itself. So that is why I definitely want to have protective tools so I can kind of wiggle that guy out after he's heated to the right temperatures. And that is also another thing I would like to address. When it comes to different filament, you're going to want to have slightly different temperatures from PLA to ABS to TPU. Typically, Bambu Lab specifically has really decent default temperatures. However, if you want to double check on anything, typically on the side of the filament itself, we'll have some temperature guidelines or the box that it came in with. Alrighty, so now that we've kind of gone through the basics of the cutter plate and we've gone through a little bit of the explanation of the heat, we can definitely go into settings, maintenance mode, and this is going to tell your unit, your 3D printer itself, especially on Bambu Lab, that you're in maintenance mode, which is a very good thing. Alright, so now we'll definitely get into the controls of the nozzle heat. Alrighty, and now that you are ready for the next step, which will be just being prepared for heating up the nozzle and succinctly checking on it, checking on the clog, and being able to put it on a safe environment to where it doesn't risk anything. Alrighty, so we'll definitely jump into heating up the nozzle. And typical the first thing that you might do is you might want to lead up to the heat. However, from personal experience, if you actually heat it up and heat it up, or heat it up and cool it down, heat it up and cool it down, it actually is re-solidifying the filament itself. So, also don't advise touching the nozzle after you started heating it up, because I also just touched a bit of hot part that right off the bat is heating up. So, and then you do see that there is some extruding filament that will happen, especially if there's some lodged in there, which is a good sign that the printer head itself knows what to do, essentially. Your first steps when you're trying to take the nozzle off will be to take these little latches, if I can. There we go. You can take that guy to get out of your way if you need. Kind of just get him out of the way. And once you're capable of doing that, you'll definitely want to go in with your bigger pliers and just make sure that you can kind of wiggle him around. He's heated up, so this is definitely where you want to be, because it allows you to have your extruded filament. Be careful, especially if you don't have any gloves or any heated glove protection. Because it is heated up, you're going to want to do your cold pull, and there you go. That is going to be your cold pull, and if there's anything at the bottom, lint, that'll definitely tell you what was in there and clogging everything. Mine was actually bonded to the heating unit itself, so I'm definitely going to want to check up on the outside of everything, and you can kind of see here exactly what is going on with the filament leak. Because we're in maintenance mode, the nozzle is still heating up, which is a-okay. We're going to want to, if you feel comfortable with the cloth that you have, wipe off that filament while it is heated up. And there might be a scenario where after you get this unclogged, you might actually want to get heated back up to clear any of the extra filament. Just want to make sure that it's not going to obstruct anything. And I'm just kind of just peeling it off. I know it might be a little bit hard to tell what I'm doing. I've done this quite a bit, and this may be a little intimidating for your first time, but that's okay. It's part of the process. It's trusting the process. Because once you're through one rodeo, you'll be able to get through the next. And then you'll realize that you're going to be at this rodeo quite a bit. But that's okay. Just making sure that I can get everything off of there. And what is definitely identifiable that I have bumped into problems with is if there's any extrusion filament leak right here, that will actually cause a dilemma between inserting the nozzle back in and being able to put these clasps back without any resistance. So that is one thing I would definitely recommend. If the camera can kind of focus, it's this lip right here. If he has any filament on here, even a centimeter's worth, that will cause problems between the nozzle fitting back into its intended location. If you also choose to cool the nozzle back off, because there is necessarily no reason for it to be heated all the time, so that's okay if you want to turn it all the way back to 0, that's a-okay. Now, because I've cleaned off the majority of this nozzle, I'm just going to set it down. And it is relatively colder now, so it's not as hot as it did as I took it off, but that's okay. And there you go. I mean, I kind of succinctly was able to show you a hot pull when it comes to taking the nozzle out and getting it detached from the heating unit itself, especially if you have, depending on the degree of extrusion, clogging. If the filament has blown up, if it's kind of small like mine, or just kind of on the outside, it definitely helps. And then that cold pull, hopefully I can get the camera to work with me, is definitely going to want to be something still on the list of what you want to do, just to make sure there's nothing affecting the nozzle itself. Other than that, we have our unit cooling down, essentially, so that's good. We're in the green. Now, once we get this all cooled down, we'll be able to put the nozzle back in after, if you so please, with this tool. You can take it out. Be very careful, it is a very pointy, long needle. If you feel risque enough, and grab the nozzle after it's done cooling down, you can essentially try and go through that small opening just to make sure there's nothing else in the way, and it will stop essentially if there is. So that tells me that essentially I'm going to want to put it back on and then make sure that when I heat it back up, everything that is clogging within here can come out just like it was doing earlier with this guy, with this little extrusion. Other than that, we still have him cooling down. We can work on the next steps of troubleshooting this guy really quickly if we'd like to. Just for safety reasons, put that back. And the best way to do this, you can use tweezers, you can use pliers, whichever way you would wish to. You can push within here, just to kind of press on that pressure button and lift up. It's definitely going to be a little bit more advanced of confidence. You can kind of see it lifting up, right? And you can take him out. You can either decide to take this guy out, and take these off, or take these off first and then take this guy out. It's very simple to take this guy off, actually. You can use your fingernail, a penny, whichever, and it's just pushing these down. Or you can come back in with your pliers and you can push down on that too. Try as much as you can to not damage these ends, because you're still going to need them afterwards. There we go. And then get the PTFE tubes out of the way. And then here you go. This guy can come out with a little spring. Sometimes he may not. Mine might actually need a little bit of cleaning. However, the method that you can use to be able to cold pull through this, to be able to get anything out of there or make sure that nothing is clogging inside of it, is you can put it through light, or you can also decide to go through the method of just pulling filament through it, through each hole. So that hole goes through, that hole goes through, that hole goes through. So now I know that my extrusion error wasn't linked to this. I mean, we did go through the nozzle already. However, if the nozzle wasn't the problem, then this would have been the next troubleshooting area, and this is what tells you if this is the problem. Because essentially where the multi-filament chamber is, it's just going to want to go into one channel, and there could be something lodged in there or some filament stuck in there, and that is going to be a little bit more on the complex side. However, typically, that's how you're able to troubleshoot this. To just reinstall, you just want to make sure these notches are all lined up to where they were. Of course, mine is going to take a second. You can hold down here, especially if the nozzle should be cooled down 100%. Just going to want to hold this. And this one's a little bit harder to clip back on. So there we go. And then you'll just make sure that this guy operates the same way and can push down freely. And then you can reattach your PTFE tubes. So the only other method to be able to check if this guy, the extrusion of the actual unit itself, is not the problem itself too, then you can put filament through the hole after this has been removed, and you can push it all the way through and twist this just to make sure that the filament goes back and forth and that there is nothing clogging in here, which again, typically when you have these clogging errors, it's either going to be above the extruder or below it, which will be the nozzle, which is the most typical. So that is the process of troubleshooting here within the multi-filament chamber and the nozzle. And then just for the sake of the video, I do want to show how to reinstall the majority of the units. So we can get these clasps out of the way. I just have an instinct to not touch them because they can actually be dangerously hot because they are still attached to the heating unit and they aren't what cools down also. So just so you are aware, this flat unit is going to be what is on the flat side, just like this area that it heats up the nozzle will be similar to what's on the extruder head, the printer head itself. So once we get him kind of lodged back in there, fits snug, this is where it's going to be important with the filament leak if there's any sort of problem. It is meant to be able to clasp very easily. So if I have any problems right now, I don't want to force it. And that is something I wanted to show you because that means that this could either be crooked or there's some sort of filament issue getting in the way. So that is something I did want to show you really quick. So this is something I actually do want to add to the video. So my extruder is actually not wanting to go back in. And that I'm able to actually find out. It's very hard to tell if there's actually a layer cake down here also of some sort of filament, right? And because that filament is there, it's actually obstructing what I told you, the lip, from actually fitting perfectly down here. And like I said, even a centimeter will affect that. So that actually means the next steps, if this is a problem that you also have to troubleshoot, is going back up to a higher temperature. Okay. Trying to see if you aren't able to grab. Yeah. Even that little bit amount of filament, you see how it can kind of just get in the way. This is burned filament, by the way, because I've bumped into a nozzle not wanting to fit many times before. Hence why I find it as a useful tip. Definitely don't advise touching it with your fingers. However, if you're confident enough and quick enough, you might be able to wipe something off with your finger. However, oh yeah, there we go. Let's get all that gunk off, you know? And this will actually ruin whatever cloth you do have. So, if you don't want it on the cloth that you chose, then pick a sock with a hole in it, whichever you want. Just in case this is along the problem that you face. Alrighty, and once you feel like you've sufficiently put that through, if you want to cool him down maybe 100 degrees, and still try and get any of the excess filament off, you can either turn it completely off, the nozzle heat, or keep it on slightly while you install this back in. It does make it a bit trickier. This is more on the advanced side, of course. Because eventually this will also get hot because of the exposure. Yep. Just touch the fan, and you see how it easily wants to go back in? It doesn't want to be forced. It doesn't want to be bent or melted or anything like that. That is why I feel like this is a very, very good tip for anyone having nozzle problems, because I remember when I got a first nozzle problem, I couldn't afford buying as many as I needed. So, hopefully this actually heats filament back up once reinstalled, and we can get to the next step, which will be the last. However, I do want to note that the reason why my extruder, my nozzle problem with this guy sticking to it was probably actually because of the filament melted down there. It was connected to the printer head and the nozzle, so that is why it's a very good idea to check down there. And now we're just going to insert the needle to try and see if there's anything still blocking it, which there is. This will get hot for a quick second, so just do it quick as you can. And this may cause for another cold pull if you choose, or you can either replace the nozzle itself entirely. I will be working through another cold pull, everything that we've just went through, to make sure that the clog is cleared. And just to close on this video, to make sure even the instruction video, the nozzle itself is unclogged. So the reason I found out why it is not working for going through here is because this needle is actually bigger than 0.4 millimeters. So, to be able to make sure nothing is wrong, I just heated up about 10-15 degrees more than 200 degrees Celsius, just to make sure that there's nothing excess in there. I can take this guy out and just present to you guys. And if I go through this method, which is the other method, you can kind of, if you can, see in the camera, little pokey guy coming out. And that essentially will allow me to confirm from the other end that there is no longer an extruder error. I can actually hold him. There we go. We're good. Okay. Take the needle out. Install back. Oh. And that's just an example of not wanting to force it. See, we all learn here. We all make mistakes. That's the point of this video. Stay there though. Okay, maybe this guy's crooked. It's all about the troubleshooting. Yes, it can become a hassle, however, it's all to protect the machine. Just kind of lodging him in there, making sure there's no gap. And I'm free to touch the nozzle because this is low enough. But yeah, there you are. And then reinstalling everything, putting everything back in its rightful place, because we will need to use him again. And the protective heating unit. Okay, maybe. Without the cover on, it definitely puzzles me a little bit. Making sure both are clipped on. There we go. And once we get him back in, we have him at a certain level. And then we can start reinstalling the PTFE tube. And then if you want to go a step further, you can go to your filament. And then just switching sides here. There we go. And just get this guy wound up in here. Load him through. And you see how there's going to be the typical default. Let me get you closer. Like I said, the default temperatures for Bambu Lab are definitely going to be very useful. However, the temperatures are on the side of the filament. And now we wait. Still on the waiting side. That's okay. You jump through the process. So if I kick you over here, you might just be able to see the old filament purging. And that is good news, folks. That is exactly what we were aiming for. There we go. Alrighty. I definitely wanted to thank you guys for continuing to watch and to be able to find out something new today and help you if you're having extrusion problems. I hope I didn't miss anything. Yes, I did put up my hair so I could get it out of the way. There's definitely going to be some imperfections in this video, but that's part of the process, and that is essentially what I'm trying to highlight within helping and being here for the community and making this community space, is allowing you guys to see that it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just the process of learning, right? So, if there's any questions or anything that I might have missed, anything along those lines, Feel free to leave a comment below. If you want any more tips, follow for more. If you have any other ideas, comments, the floor is open. And I appreciate you guys coming. This is going to be the very first video of the channel, and this is the beginning of the channel, so I actually do appreciate you being a part of it, and it's just forward from here. It's part of the process, right? So thank you, and have a good night.